Hi, everyone, and welcome to another session in our Liquid Donate webinar series where we explore innovative solutions for the modern challenges of retail returns and excess inventory. Today, we're excited to chat with Jada Westorp, CEO of 3PL, whose platform is redefining how brands find the right 3PL partner to optimize returns and unlock hidden value. If you've ever found yourself frustrated by slow return processing, opaque tracking, or a 3PL that just isn't up to date with today's tech standards, today's conversation is for you. Jada, thank you so much for joining us. For those new to 3PL, can you give us your 30-second elevator pitch? What's the problem you're solving and who do you serve?
Yeah, definitely. Yes, as you said, my name is Jada. I founded 3PL about 2 years ago as a way to help brands, e-commerce, B2B, D2C, omni-channel connect with 3PL providers a lot faster, easier, and with less headaches. So essentially, you can think of us as almost like a matchmaker between brands and third-party logistics providers. What essentially we do is we gather information from the brand on exactly what their requirements are from a 3PL. And then we go into our network and we find who we think would be the best options for them to work with that would be able to meet all of their specific standards, requirements, wish list items, and really just like style of having a partnership. So we do all that legwork for them. Right now, just to give you a general overview of why this is important and the pain points that we see, there's over 10,000 3PLs estimated in the US alone. And oftentimes retailers feel overwhelmed by trying to find a third-party logistics provider on their own. So they go to Google searches, they go to ChatGPT, they go to their best friends in the industry, but oftentimes, the 3PL that's a good fit for another brand isn't necessarily a good fit for your brand based on your requirements. So 3PL takes the guesswork out of that, and we're able to connect brands with 3PLs in a matter of days sometimes even in a matter of hours. So really quickly, on average, our brands save around 1 month of search time and a lot of headache, obviously, in between as well.
Yeah, wow. So it sounds like you're very familiar with the problem. Was there a specific like aha moment that made you realize that 3PL needed to exist?
Yeah, exactly. My background personally is on the e-commerce brand side of things. So I've worked as a brand, I've managed a 3PL, and I realize how important that partnership is. And also how difficult it can be to find a new 3PL and to find one that fits your style, right, as a brand. But in my career, I've also worked with hundreds of brands. I was in software sales for a while, so I was dealing with all of their pain points in post-purchase specifically. And it was coming up very frequently that the brands were either unhappy with their current 3PL, looking to find a 3PL that's more optimal, either for their costs or their logistics setup. And they would come and they would approach me as like a sales rep sometimes and ask for recommendations, not just for 3PLs, for other things too. But I always thought the 3PL piece really stood out because, at the time I really wasn't focused on doing the matching. So I knew that when, enterprise level, very large brands even are having this pain point of finding a 3PL, that this is a real problem and a real opportunity for a company to step in and just be an aid to these brands who are trying to optimize their logistics. And so that's when I established 3PL. And yeah, we've been, focused on that ever since.
Wow. What an incredible like way to bridge your background to becoming like this in really unique brand and unique infrastructure for solving this huge problem.
Yeah, thank you. Yeah, I think it's useful to have the insights from both being in the brand shoes and then working with brands like outside of just that one company, working with hundreds of brands over the years and seeing all of their different pain points when it comes to not just logistics, but anything, because everything, I think, in my view, when you're a brand, everything is interconnected. So it's never just a logistics problem. It's never just a marketing problem. It's never just a branding problem. All streams go hand in hand. So even though we clearly focus on 3PLs and helping optimize logistics, A lot of the 3PLs have other value adds that lean into marketing, customer support, and obviously the 3PL is the last touch point before the physical product gets to the end consumer. So it all goes hand in hand. And yeah, again, just focusing and helping brands optimize the entire operations is really something that I'm proud of 3PL being a part of. And it's very helpful to have kind of the knowledge and insights that I'd previously had established at different places.
Yeah. Well, great for you, and really glad to have you here. And thank you for taking your time to talk to us.
No,
Um,
thank you.
Yeah, I wanted to talk more about like some of the problems you might see now in the 3PL space. So a lot of 3PLs are like really important, but they weren't built for the modern pace of returns, and they're definitely not as tech enabled. So what are some of the common issues that you're seeing, and how is 3PL addressing those issues?
Yeah, so returns are everyone's least favorite subject in retail, I think. So no one likes to talk about them, but not talking about them doesn't mean that it doesn't exist and it's not a problem that doesn't need to be fixed. So what we see sometimes is a bit problematic with the 3PLs on the return side of things is sometimes they won't process returns for a few days or even like a week or two at a time, which obviously results in slower insights for the brand. It's not optimal for their inventory to sit there and not be back on the shelf or able to be resold very quickly. You know, even especially at scale, even a couple of days or hours of saved time, getting that inventory back into stock so it can be resold is extremely valuable. So brands that have high return rates tend to focus on 3PLs who are very familiar and comfortable with quick and easy returns processes. And also, like you said, a lot of 3PLs aren't as tech savvy and up to date as what they could be. And I'm excited to watch this industry continue to grow and evolve in that manner to have more tech enablement and tech enabled insights into the returns, especially. So we see partners like Two Boxes and some others that really focus on helping 3PLs get into the tech optimized return space so that their retailers, their clients can be a lot happier. Let me rephrase that. Their retailers and and clients can use their technology to essentially have faster insights into what's happening with returns, what items are coming in, what condition they're in, and then communication being streamlined between the brand and the 3PL. What are they supposed to do with that return? Should it be put back on shelf? Does it need to be refurbished? What options are does the brand want the 3PL to enable on that specific return at that specific time? And all of those insights, obviously data is the most important and valuable piece of information in any company. And so all of those insights and returns, when it's put through an optimized technology and at a 3PL who values having that technology and that insight for their brands, it's going to set the brands 10 steps ahead of their competition in terms of how they can continue to process those returns and optimize on reducing returns and getting returns back on shelf faster.
Yeah, I think like just having all that reporting is so important. I can't imagine if you're working, especially in something that's so industrialized and everything is, you can track at each step. So for there to be missing gaps in there, that's astounding and like incredible that you can provide that. Like at least like for folks to be able to find the right 3PL and what kind of service they actually need and what kind of insights they want to see.
Exactly. We're filtering at 3PL for warehouses that are optimized for return. So the ones who are utilizing the return specific technology, the ones who are working with high return rate industries like apparel, shoes, accessories, etc., that are used to processing those and know what their client expectations are and how they can help them even a step further, like without being asked. I think that's like the number one thing that gets overlooked in what to look for in a 3PL. It's their proactiveness and saying, hey, like you guys are a brand, you have other things to focus on. That's why you're outsourcing your logistics. So let us step in and make suggestions on where we see improvements can be made in your warehousing and fulfillment side of things. And that really sets the 3PLs apart from each other, especially in some specific subsets like returns focused.
I think that's just good client management. Like you want to be proactive and you want to provide value for your client. Why do you think some 3PLs aren't return focused? Like the ones that are kind of like pretending it doesn't exist. Why do you think that is?
Yeah, I think some of them just aren't, working with industries that have high return rates, so they get used to it not having to deal with it. Maybe like certain CPG or beauty companies who don't accept returns. It also is a headache, right? Because these are individual items that are getting sent back in various conditions that have to be tracked. It takes a lot of manual hand processing to open a box, to inspect the item, and then, like I said, to communicate that item's condition and possibilities back to the brand, and then wait and get an answer, and then record what happens from there. So the process of handling a return at a warehouse can be like very not fun to deal with. And so a lot of 3PLs just prefer to not deal with it. Um, Again, that's where we at 3PL try to differentiate and figure out like what each of our 3PLs is actually very good at doing and what they like to concentrate on and what they're set up to optimize for.
Yeah, so it really is specific on each brand, what they offer, their own individual return policies, and the behavior of the consumers. Like it is the whole.
Exactly. And what technology that the brand is using. Like some of them are using automated returns platforms that need integrations directly into the warehouse management systems, or they're looking for, like you said, those specific requirements or guidelines on what to do with the return. And they have to be able to communicate that to the 3PL. Like some items, like think of a computer, it might need refurbished, or a piece of technology or hardware that gets returned. It might need to actually be open, turned on, reset, and then dealt with in a fragile manner. And so all of these steps, there's a lot of room for miscommunication. And anytime there's a miscommunication, then something can go wrong, which is not ideal. So it takes a very well trained 3PL to be able to handle some of these brand requirements for returns.
Yeah. So if like let's say a company is kind of like on the fence about their 3PL, what are some of the red flags that brands should be watching out for?
Yeah, I think brands will pretty much know how their relationships are going with their 3PLs. And I never encourage a brand to move 3PLs unless they feel a need to, right? Like, of course, my business model is, benefiting off of any time a brand does have to find a new 3PL. But our goal is not to make brands feel like they need to be moving. We really want them to have well-established long-term partnerships and be happy with their 3PL, because it's not a super fun process for anyone to go through. So whenever we get feedback from brands and they're talking about red flags that their 3PLs are doing or they've seen, it generally always revolves around similar themes. So the number one issue that we hear back is lack of communication or very poor communication. Um, so a brand submitting a problem and not hearing back from the 3PL for a day or 2 days or several days, sometimes, unfortunately, uh, or the 3PL having an issue on their side and not having communicated that back to the brand. And potentially they had to have found out, through a customer or a supplier or some other way that they've gotten this information back to them, or they found out, weeks later, that there was an issue with something in the 3PL that wasn't communicated properly. So the lines of communication, it's like any partnership, it's like any relationship. They need to be super crystal clear, wide open, and super responsive. So that's, I think, the number one issue that the brands are usually complaining about as a red flag. Another red flag that some 3PLs will display is issues with transparency and pricing, or raising pricing suddenly or frequently. So brands are, of course, cost sensitive, as they should be. And they're usually more than willing to accept like normal price increases, right? Like shipping prices are always fluctuating and usually generally going up every quarter or every year, and that's coming from the carrier. But when a 3PL is quoting a price at the beginning of a relationship and then suddenly spikes it not too far into the relationship or at any point without really giving the brand fair notice or, giving them a good reason as to why the pricing is increasing so much, then the brands really feel like they're being taken advantage of. And the 3PL movement process can take a long time. And I think, unfortunately, some 3PLs know that. And so there's not much that they can do right away, at least to rectify that. So also like having that transparency in their pricing. Sometimes brands get invoices and they're not sure what they're exactly being charged for. So they will have just a big lump number on the end of the invoice. And maybe if it seems off, they can't really pinpoint at what point that pricing like doesn't fit what they would have expected. So having a tool that can help with 3PL auditing is also super helpful, but also just initially having that transparency in pricing and invoicing from the 3PL so that brands can have predictable costs. That's very important as well. And then let me think, what's another red flag from a 3PL? Obviously, if someone is over-promising and under-delivering, then that is a red flag. So unfortunately, some 3PLs have extremely good sales teams and will promise a lot. But if a brand doesn't do enough digging at the beginning, before they sign the contract or at the beginning of the relationship, obviously the 3PLs can have an advantage there in terms of like what they actually can perform for, and then what they are actually providing in terms of value to the end client. So no industry is perfect, but there are some major red flags that we hear back on a regular basis about how 3PLs are having dealt with their brands, their clients.
Wow. Yeah, I can imagine being on the other side of that. Like, just having to deal with all these like more than hiccups, they're along, like if they're systemic and they're repeated, it must be such a tough decision when you're acknowledging that there's a problem and then kind of gearing in the direction of making a switch. So when folks come to you for the switch, like, are they also looking for help with like de-risking the transition process? Like, how does 3PL help kind of navigate the transition?
Yeah, so in terms of like them looking for a 3PL that can actually meet their requirements, as we were mentioning, some 3PLs will say they can do one thing and then, they can't. So it's often difficult for the brands to be able to tell, what the capabilities really are as a 3PL. So when we are looking at a 3PL, we're looking at their current client base and what they're currently serving, what types of companies they're currently serving, the industries they work with, the volumes that they're carrying, the average tenure and turnover of those clients. And that really gives us good insight into what types of brands would be good fits for those types of 3PLs, and inversely, what 3PLs would be good fits for certain brand requirements. So we try to get them in contact with the 3PLs that would actually be able to suit their needs, and avoid a lot of manual outreach that the brand would have to do on their own, emailing individual 3PLs after finding them, being ignored, not getting replies back. We're able to give them a warm introduction to the right contact at the 3PL right away so that they can get those conversations started and then start deep diving on their own. We also have like some suggested vetting questions. So as the brand is interviewing the 3PL individually, which we obviously recommend that they do a deep dive on, it gives them some guidance on some of the harder questions to ask so that they can hear those feedback from the 3PL directly. So things like, tell me about a time when something went wrong in the warehouse. How have you dealt with it? What are your financials? What kind of, financial backing, and you can get a sense for how financially secure and sound a 3PL is as well. So even some of those basic things, like making sure that your 3PL is going to be around for a long time. And again, like who else they're working with, what other types of value adds that they can actually do, and then taking an in-person tour, or if you can't make it in person, to do a warehouse visit, at least getting like a virtual tour so you can see what does the warehouse look like, what are they operating like, and talk to the operation manager and to your contacts that you would be having at the warehouse to see what those lines of communication are like.
Wow. So it's a very white glove, consultative, like customized process.
Yes, we try to make it consultative so that you have a human matching a human. There are some other options that are more of like 3PL listings. So you can go to a website and just scroll through listings and use filters to check mark on and off what you're looking for. And there's some merit to that. But I always think that like humans are dealing with humans at the end of the day, and that's really a key to a relationship. So um, as logical as it would be to just check mark off boxes and choose according to like what checks all the boxes, which is like the phrase, right? If you don't have the communication and the vibe and the openness when you talk to that 3PL and when you're actually communicating with them, regardless of what they say they can do on paper, you're going to have some issues in the potential relationship that you have with that 3PL. So we try to really feel out what kinds of 3PLs the brands are looking for, not just with basic requirements, but also like what is their style? Do they prefer to be more hands-on, hands-off? How much hand-holding would they need? And then what is the style of the 3PL? Do they have time to hand-hold? Are they used to working with enterprise level clients who, they check in very rarely with or less often than they would like a smaller mid-size market brand? Are they capable of scaling and growing and having that communication for these like drops or last minute requests that are coming in? So it really does matter the almost personality of the businesses and how well that they would mesh together. And I think that that is a unique offering that 3PL really takes on. We try to get to know both the 3PL and the brand, and in that way make that kind of white glove match, like you mentioned.
Yeah, it's like it is a human problem because from what you're talking about, all the red flags or the pain points are like problems with like communication, which is like at its core like a human problem. So it makes sense that it is very human centered while still prioritizing the technical abilities of these 3PLs and their platforms. What a balance between tech and humans.
Yeah, and that's, I think, logistics in a nutshell. It is such a balance between the people and then the capabilities, which is really unique.
Totally. So once like brands have made switches, or can you share any stories of some switch, like some transitions from that you've assisted with where a brand has seen like cost savings or better operational efficiencies or any added value when they've found a 3PL that better fits their brand?
Yeah, definitely. So we have a few that focus on cost savings. One that I can think of was a smaller startup, but they were in the luxury space, luxury retail space. So they wanted a top tier 3PL that's going to give their packages like white glove treatment. But they also wanted to optimize costs where possible, right? So we connected them to one of our really, I would consider like a premium 3PL that specializes in being a boutique and white glove and more hands-on. And while they were setting up with that 3PL, the 3PL automatically found a way to save them over 30% on their shipping costs just by a small operational change in how the packages were basically going to be put together that they were going to be shipping out for this brand. So again, with the 3PL being proactive and having the client's best interest in mind, instead of just thinking about the 3PL's bottom line, right? Like they could have maybe made that much more profit off of this brand, but they knew in the long run to create a long-term relationship and partnership, it was more advantageous to put that brand's needs ahead of theirs. And so, yeah, the brand immediately saw from the start a 30% savings in shipping costs.
Nice.
Um, Another one is we had a retail brand, a D2C brand only, and they had been using a 3PL for a while that they were okay with, but they really wanted to optimize the transparency, communication, and shipping options. So we connected to them with a 3PL that was centrally located and they started saving around 20% on their shipping costs because they had a central location, but they also, instead of being charged based on dimensional weight, which was what their old 3PL was doing, obviously not really paying attention to that particular client's needs. It was one of those, it was a bigger box 3PL. So they didn't really have so much time, I think, to individualize attention for some of their mid-sized clients. We put them with a smaller 3PL who was able to switch them from dimensional weight to actual weights, which saved them, a large percentage on their shipping right away as well. So again, just having a 3PL that's paying attention to the client's needs and able to save them money off the bat has happened a few times.
Wow, nice. That those sound like really awesome success stories. I'm sure you have so much more. I want to talk a little bit about like returns after their process. So we've talked about like a lot of these pain points where folks are talking about like just shipping in general, the returns process. So after returns, like what Liquid Donate has um, come up with is a way to an option for folks to send usable returns to local nonprofits. So, how do you see this kind of like donation model fitting into the modern reverse logistics stack?
I think it's super important, and I just love the concept of donating the returns instead of just destroying them or, having other options available. Yeah, Liquid Donate is a great partner in terms of optimizing reverse logistics, and I love the concept of donating these goods instead of just destroying them, getting rid of them, or having them sit around for months, if not years on end, in the back corner of some warehouse taking up space. So I think that that is the way that the 3PL and logistics movement is going, trying to optimize obviously what's being done with these returns to get the most benefit out of them. So if a return is coming back and it for some reason can't be resold, or it just, it's out of season at this point, and it can be donated, then Liquid Donates, I think, our top partner for us to be able to recommend to the 3PLs, like how to free up that warehouse space again, get the goods to a place that could do good with them, and donate them, and obviously give the retailer even more confidence in what they're doing, which is donating their goods and seeing it go to a good resource instead of getting rid of them or wasting, so that everything is more sustainable, and the cost savings are there as well.
Yeah, I think what a lot of folks don't know is that they might be losing out on money when the return goes back to the warehouse. It sits there paying for the storage of it all. And then when it just kind of like it never touches the warehouse, there's that savings and then there's also the tax benefits that you get on top of it. So at the end of the day, I think like what they've done at Liquid Donate has been like not just for the environment. I think it's an incredible way to reduce waste and support like environmental goals, but it is one of the most like efficient ways to really manage overproduction and even just the way that our like culturally like returns have become so normalized for the consumer, and I don't think that's going away. I think if anything people are trying to figure out more ways to what they call return fraud. So I'm glad that we've been able to work together, and I'm glad that like you've been able to see the benefit of it all too. Um, I want to talk a little bit about something that's been really trendy right now. Well, not trendy, actually, like just horrible in the news, but talk on tariffs. So there's been a lot of chatter around tariffs, and it's been up and down as we all as we all have known. So without going too deep, have you noticed any brands pushing to reassess their logistics setups because of the potential or even like the current way that tariffs are going?
Yeah, definitely. And as you said, the tariff situation is up and down and different every day. So when the initial news was released and Section 321 was being attacked, then we actually had an influx, a really high influx of brands coming to us that wanted to move their location based on this new setup, because some brands' entire business models and profit margins ran off of utilizing that part of the tariff tax code. So we were able to place these brands in new 3PLs very, very quickly. Like within a couple of days, some of them had already made a new choice on which 3PL to go to so that they could save their business and save that margin that they needed to make that movement. And since then, we obviously see a lot of brands that are hesitant to make new moves as well. So just know if you're a brand and you're out there and you are concerned about the tariffs and you're not sure what next step to make, you're not alone. I think every single retailer right now is evaluating what's best for them over the next coming weeks, months, and potentially years. So there is a lot of reevaluation right now around what those tariffs mean for brands and where the optimal location for their warehouse is should be. Some we see are splitting up their warehousing so that it becomes more localized. So they have now like a US based 3PL, and they're also looking in Europe or Asia or the other countries that they used to service from the US to keep those markets more local and retain more margin in those areas.
Nice. Well, glad you can provide that, especially in when right now it's just kind of uncertain. Like, do we do folks make the decision to write it out and wait, or do they act now as a way to prevent any terrible terrible cost accruing?
Yeah, it's hard to say, but 3PL is here to support those decisions on either side. So even if a brand just wants to have some options ready to go, just in case to evaluate and decide whenever they feel comfortable, it's no cost, no obligation for 3PL to connect brands with any 3PL globally. So we would love to help them just evaluate the market and then have those plans in place for whenever they do decide if they do decide to make any moves.
Nice. You heard it here.
Yeah.
Well, tariffs aside, I want to ask, like, if you could wave a magic wand and fix one part of the retail supply chain, you've seen so much happen. So, what would you change if you could do it in an instant?
Oh, wow. This is a powerful wand. Hold on, let me think about it. Yeah, I think my one wish for all retailers is that they feel good about their business and fully supported from all ends. And as I like mentioned before, like no part of retail doesn't touch the other part. So it's never just a marketing problem. It's never just a branding problem or just a logistics problem. And so I want the brands to always feel comfortable with the logistics partners they are working with. And so if I could wave a magic wand, I would just make all 3PLs as transparent and perfect and shiny and bright and beautiful and helpful as possible, so that the brands really feel supported in this industry. The 3PL industry has a bit of a rough reputation, I will say. Most brands, I think if you surveyed, would say that they're not super happy with their 3PL or they're just okay. It's a rough space to play in because of the amount of variance and elements that these 3PLs have to deal with. So if I could, I would love to just make the 3PLs as transparent, communicative, forward thinking, helpful, and aligned as possible with their brands so that the brands really feel like the 3PL is an extension of their entire business arm. And that they don't have to worry about that side of things at all. And so those are the types of 3PLs that 3PL really, idealizes and puts into our network and puts forward to our brands who need that help and who are looking for that type and level of support.
Yeah, I mean, if you could wave that magic wand, you'd have so many 3PLs in your network. You'd have them all.
Yes.
Well, thank you so much for sharing your insights and sharing such incredible like knowledge into the industry and into the 3PL space. What's next for 3PL? Anything on the roadmap that you want to share that you're excited to take on?
Yeah, so I'm really excited. We haven't like publicly announced exactly what's coming out yet, but I will tell you guys, and maybe by the time this is like being aired somewhere, 3PL is developing an app that's going to further help our merchants, our brands to evaluate the optimal 3PL. So as I mentioned, we're the human to human contact point. We like to, help match the 3PLs to the brands in a humanized way, but it's also important to take take into consideration numbers and data behind these decisions about where a 3PL should be located and all of those numbers that we're going to be using in our app to help these brands evaluate the best 3PL for their specific fit. So we're going to be using real-time customer data pulled in from their Shopify store. And then we'll optimize and give them results on the best location for their 3PL to be in. And then we'll obviously be able to give them, one-click access to be able to get connected to 3PLs in those areas so that they can save money, save time, reduce cost, headache, and concern, and using real data algorithms and AI to translate what their best option for 3PL locations should be.
Wow, wow, that's incredible. What a robust application to be able to do that. I'm so excited for you all and so impressed.
Thank
Wow.
you. I'm excited. I'm excited to continue helping brands to just optimize their entire supply chain where possible.
Yeah. Well, thank you so much for sharing that and for sharing everything today and sharing your time. Um, I'm really happy to have you here today and really honored that you decided to come talk to us today. Thank you so much, Jada.
Thank you so much. It was great chatting with you.